Why is a third party the answer? I have a poster on the Breaking Point set of William Jennings Bryan, somebody I deeply respect, who essentially was a third party candidate, but who transformed and took over the Democratic Party in the 1890s. Donald Trump, in many ways, the most transformative political figure of my lifetime, had no connection with the institutional GOP, but effectively took it over from the outside and remade it in his own image. Why not, Andrew? You are famous. You've run in the presidential primary. You had the proven ability to raise tens of millions of dollars in the Democratic Party, more so than many establishment figures. Why not leverage your part of that Democratic Party and try and take it over from within? Why is this the answer you have to go with?
Saagar, I think that your importance in the media landscape can't be understated. You too, Marshall, Crystal, when you say like, hey, there's a sizable audience for this, I think there is a massive audience, and it heartens me that that audience continues to grow. Because a lot of folks say to me in normal life, be like, hey, I don't even know where to go for news anymore. And some, and some of them have found you and other independent voices. And I think that's so necessary. I think if we can continue to grow that point of view, then it can become more of a political force. Now, I think that you've actually articulated in some ways a dynamic that would strengthen the need to have more political dynamism and multiple parties. So Donald Trump has taken over the Republican Party. I know and you know that there are many people who have different points of view than Donald Trump within the party, but don't breathe a word, because if they do, they will be cast out and their political careers will be ended. And why is that? It's because we have this two-party system, and party primaries control so much, and that if you say a bad word about Trump, you're out. I'm going to suggest that's not excellent for democracy generally. And then you have the Democratic Party, and you say, hey, Andrew, why don't you just take over the Democratic Party, Trump style? So right now, the big difference between Democrats and Republicans is that Democrats are institutionalists and Republicans are not. I cannot tell you how many independents and Republicans came up to me and be like, hey, man, love you. Like, way to go against, the entrenched machine and the rest of it. But within the Democratic Party, they really believe in bureaucracies and machines and processes to a much, much higher degree. And here's a stat that I think illustrates the difference between the parties. 69% of Democrats say they have a high trust in media, by media, generally the corporate media.
Right.
Independents, 36%. Republicans, 15%. So Republicans don't believe it at all, and just they think that the institutions are corrupt now to get us. The Democrats are the people who believe in it and are just like, oh yeah, that things are going all right. Like, just let the people who've been doing it for a while keep doing it. So you have very, very different dynamics, and it's going to influence who winds up emerging from each side.
Something I'm wondering is, what do independents actually believe? Because I love the 62% Gallup poll looking for a third party. We'll put it up in the show notes. But if you actually look into the data, it gets a little interesting, given the fact that, for example, a decent number of those independents are former Republicans who actually want the Republican Party to become more Trumpy, not less. Another interesting thing that came to mind when you're talking about how you get drummed out of the Republican Party if you don't vote for Trump is the fact that Liz Cheney actually voted with Trump more than Elise Stefanik did. So there's a certain weird mix of personalities and coalitions and dynamics. But I guess what I kind of wonder is, if we're actually looking at the country and the results of the politics that we're engaging in, considering the fact that Liz Cheney actually does, once again, vote pretty conservative, aside from the Trump thing, how is giving her her own tiny coalition party that would end up still working with the Republican Party on most questions? Once again, she votes with Trump most of the time, far more than her competitor, Elise Stefanik. How would that change things, especially when we're talking about the big, big issues here? So, for example, the Supreme Court Let's say you have a progressive party and a center-left Democratic Party. They're going to fight about climate change. They're going to fight about the Green New Deal. They're going to fight about the $3.5 trillion budget package. But they are going to vote in lockstep on Supreme Court nominees. And that is a type of vote which seems to be drawing or causing the Civil War level conflict we're afraid of here. So how do you just reflect on all that?
I think that if you had, let's call them moderate Republicans or something like that, that was like a non-Trump alternative, I think they might vote along with Trump over and over again on a lot of things, but they might diverge from him on things like vote counts or like constitutional protections of elections or things like that. I'm going to suggest that's a very crucial distinction. that if you had a critical mass of Republicans that were ready to do that, then I think we'd be in better shape. And that's a positive. That's one of the reasons why I think we need to build a more resilient system. Again, and if you build a system like this, and it's now much more susceptible to authoritarianism and undemocratic impulses than most people would imagine. And we can change that. We can fix it. We don't have unlimited time, in my opinion, but we should really work on it, do it as quickly as possible. But it's not about every vote. It's about certain principles that might be extraordinarily valuable to our country and our democracy.
Andrew, one thing I want you to reflect on is policy. You know, when you ran, you were the policy candidate. You had the math hats. I used to really believe in policy, that people would vote on policy. But as the elections went on, and as I saw Trump win 10 million more votes, as I start to see, stuff turn on questions of, do you think the election was stolen or not, as opposed to, did Trump do anything to actually better your life? I honestly got I was pretty black-pilled on the whole thing. And I guess my question to you is, does policy matter at all whenever it comes to these? Because as you point to, and as Marshall just alluded to, 62% say that they want a third party. Really what that is they're holding a middle finger up and saying, I hate the system. And I've always ascribed Trump's success to nothing that he's ever actually done in office, and just directionally being the voice that agrees with the majority of the public who say, I hate our institutions. And it was really upsetting to me to learn that that was enough for millions of people to cast their vote for President of the United States. How have you reflected on that from when you announced your run on policy and are almost in an age where it's not the defining, it's not the defining issue of our time?
Saagar, I go into this in my book in some detail, as you know, and I had a similar awakening or grappling as you. And in Ezra's book, Why We're Polarized, he talks about how the correlation between the way people vote and their policy desires are actually very low. Something like 0.25, where, so you're not voting on policy. What are you voting on? You're voting on tribalism and identity and anger and the kind of energy that a candidate gives off and their attitude towards institutions. And so this is one of the things that I grapple with in my book, and I've identified as the reason why I need to start the Forward Party and make it a success, is that there is a band of people that did respond to me in my campaign, the policy vision, the facts. And what happened was that we activated a certain group of people that like that kind of thing. Maybe they like me, maybe they like my, like my particular energy. And when I started out, I thought I'd be received a certain way. I thought I'd be seen as very, very lefty because, I was talking about giving everyone money. But it turns out that I have a very different vibe, maybe because I've run businesses, maybe because I seem kind of practical. And so it turns out there's like a lane for the practical person. And when you talk about the things that are animating voters, I now see myself as someone who can activate a tribe. And I was joking with some people that it's like, look, do I think that 51% of people love this language I speak of facts and rationality and fixing systems and the rest of it? It's like, probably not. But do I think that 10% of Americans love it? And that 10% can do a ton of good in a country that's polarized the way ours is? And the answer to that is hell yeah. It's like if I get my band of rational, solutions-oriented, facts-driven people together, and then we can come in and say, look, let's fix the system so it'll actually work for everyone, and it's more resistant to bad things, and more pro-compromise, and the incentives are more rational. I'm at heart an operator type, and if you arrive at a system and you see that the system is going to produce terrible results, and oh, by the way, that's what we're getting, and in this case, those terrible results will actually eventually have us at each other's throats. I'm sure I'll be like throwing things at you and Marshall, and I'm just kidding. But like if you arrive on the scene and that's the system, then the right thing to do is be like, all right, let's fix the system. And then if the system's run, in this case, by this duopoly, you'd be like, all right, how do we fix the system? It's run by this duopoly. And the answer is something like the Forward Party, which is going to try and get into the guts of our system, fix the mechanics. Now, to do that, we're going to have to ignite a popular movement. So let's get started.